interested in sound editing, so you've got the shoot, you've got the picture editing, you've got the sound editing comes next. So after the film is locked off, after the picture editor has done what they need to do, it's given to us and then we improve upon it. So we, as a dialogue editor, you would think that I wouldn't have anything to do, but indeed I do, because I need to make sure that people can understand what's being said, that, you know, that if we shot in Sydney but it's meant to be Shanghai, I need to cut out all the noises that make it Sydney, you know, like currawongs or particular crickets or particular seagulls or whatever. So I have to actually we either have to re-record the dialogue in a studio, or I have to try and cut it out as best I can. So there's intelligibility, clarity of story, there's all sorts of things that go into it. So I'm dialogue, but there's of course all the sound editors who put in the explosions, the cars, you'd be quite surprised that the majority of all of that stuff is replaced, that the recordings they did on the day are not usable, basically, because they're not close enough, because the camera needs to, you know, the boom can't get in. So basically all of that stuff is recreated, so you don't end up with just one or two, you know, car driving off. There's actually probably, you know, 40 or 50 tracks that go into one little sound. So there's different components that go into one sound. That's quite a lot of work. So I've done about 50 film projects and television in there as well, but mostly feature film. I've won a few awards, including I was part of the Academy Award-winning team that did King Kong, that was shot in New Zealand. And the most recent award was for Gatsby. So that's just me.
Did you reach into the prior to attending?
I did a bit, but not really, no. I was a really good shoot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got all your experience from the ground up in different types of roles?
Yes. I did start a post-production company before I went to film school. Just on the line, but with a couple of friends we started up and mostly rented out film editing equipment to the documentary makers.
So why did you decide to go to film school?
Just to kind of close, make that big leap, just change completely from being known as a production person with all those skills and expertise. It's very hard to transition out of that. So it provided me with a full stop and a new phase. So
AFTRS, for those of you who international students.
Oh, sorry. Australian Film Television Radio School was set up about 40 years ago as part of an initiative to enhance the Australian film industry and provide crew or leading crew. And there was just in the beginning it was Gillian Armstrong and Phil Noyce and all these really big name people, and it's gradually filtered down to not very many young people. As they dilated the course, they've also diluted the impact it's made on the film industry. But there's a large majority of people currently working in the film industry who will have gone through AFTRS. There's a high degree of retention in the industry.
And university, would they have had your extensive industry experience?
In the beginning, they only took people with industry experience. So it was like a finishing school. It was like you did it, you were an assistant or you were doing it at the lower level and we just kind of pushed you up. It's subsequently not the case. It's, I think it's now, they've gone back to graduate diplomas and diploma level and straight out of high school. Originally you couldn't, they had age limits, you couldn't go if you were under 21 years old, and there was a whole lot of criteria that you had to meet before they would actually even accept your application. But it has changed. So I'm a bit of a joiner. I like to get involved. I co-founded the Australian Editors Guild. can't tell you when that was, but it was a while ago. That came out of the need. There was things happening in the industry that were out of our control, and we felt that if we banded together that we might be able to make change. So with another colleague and I, we set the groundwork and set it up from scratch. So I also became a member of the MEAA, the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance, which is the union that covers the film and television industry. And that again was born out of changes that the Howard government made to they stripped back all the conditions under which we were working, and they kind of boiled it down into a few kind of bullet points. So we were in danger of losing a lot of our the working conditions that have been fought for. So I joined and have been a member ever since. So that was a while ago that happened. I've served on the MEAA steering committee for 14 years. I'm no longer on it. I served as branch vice president for 11 years. I'm no longer branch vice president. Because in amongst all of that, I also was part of the group of people that kickstarted, restarted this sound guild. So I'd moved from Editors Guild into the MEAA and out into the Sound Guild. And it was basically, the Sound Guild was basically one person at that time. So we decided to ask him if he would mind retiring his position and let us take over and reinvigorate the organisation and actually make it more relevant and start working on some issues that were starting to come up there within the Sound Guild, within the sound post-production industry. And I've given all of that up because now I'm on the Motion Picture Industry Benevolent Society as befits my age and my concerns, which is a society that looks after elderly industry workers. So that's my current focus. So, yes. So I'm a bit of a joiner. I like to get involved and do what I can to lift up whatever it is that's currently facing us in terms of hurdles. So I don't want to bang on too much about the union, but that was the brief that was given to me. So for you, in case no one's ever heard of a union, I know there's a lot of anti-union sentiment currently in Australia. So I presume if there are some people in the room that aren't entirely pro-union, but I am, because it's about working together in order to be able to change things. I mean, it's very hard, as I've found, as I've transitioned from being on steering committees and being branch vice president, etc. It's very hard to do anything on your own if you don't have the support of others, like-minded people. And part of the reason why I've left some of those jobs, or they've all been voluntary positions. Those positions is because I just didn't have any support, and I was a one-man band trying to do things on my own, and it's impossible to do that. If you care to join a union, you will meet like-minded people who care about the industry and about people working in it, which I'm very passionate about, and the long-term sustainability of the industry, which originally was what I was going to talk to you about, was sustainability of the industry, which I don't think it is sustainable, but perhaps you can tell me otherwise. Whilst being part of the union, I know that other departments, other people in different craft areas, like production designers or model makers, cinematographers, armourers, who are the guys that look after the guns on set. We all had similar hurdles. I was unaware. I thought the craft area that I was working in, post-production and particularly sound post-production, was unique at the problems that we were facing. And what I learnt was actually it was much broader than that. So it was really good for me to do that, to discover that, and that we could actually work together to maybe overcome some of those hurdles. And of course I learned about the broader challenges. So it wasn't just us, it was everybody. It was like, 30 odd people in the room, all representing different, makeup, and stuff. We all had the same kind of issues. What's next? So I have to follow this because I'm just, it's been a long day.
So the MEAA is a union.
Yes.
So
they represent actors as well, and journalists, and basketballers, and people that work in race courses.
Sports personnel.
Yeah, and musicians. So they've got different branches underneath the same umbrella.
Okay. And did you find that working for a union and being part of a broader group was more effective than, say, a small guild, or do they actually serve quite different purposes?
Well, one has the ability to lobby government, which is the MEAA. So they've got a way in to the big, to the top dogs. Whereas as a guild, you're basically talking to your own people, and there's not much you can do unless you band together with other guilds who all get together and come together as a larger group with a broader based representation. So, but the MEAA has, because of its, I guess its labour-based roots, it has actual kind of pick up the phone, talk to the minister, that kind of thing. So that was more effective for me to spend my time there rather than working in the guilds. But then, that I chopped and changed depending on where the needs arose.
Mm-hmm. And then how does that then also contrast with the Benevolent Society?
The Benevolent Society is just a feel-good organisation.
Mm.
So, a lot of elders who are in trouble financially. So
that operates more like a charity, would you say?
It is a registered charity.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So we accept donations, and then people approach us for help, and then they're very heavily scrutinised.
And that's a real problem in the industry.
It is a real problem in the industry because, of course, you've got an elder generation that has no superannuation. You've also got the vast changes in the cinema industry. If you just think about projectionists, for an example, there used to be one projectionist per screen. You're lucky now if you get one projectionist in a complex. I've actually been to a cinema on a Friday night and been horrified to learn that there was not one in the bio box, which is basically where all the film is laced up, or not laced up anymore, where the film is projected from. So now it's turned into a big long corridor with a bunch of computers that are all operating by themselves. So there's no one up there checking focus, making sure the sound's correct. It's just unbelievable. So you've gone from having one projectionist per screen to having potentially nobody. So there's been a huge change in workforce. Once upon a time they were usherettes. I'm not sure if you even know what they are, but they used to walk around the cinema and with candy, with lollies and drinks and stuff. And so there was a whole kind of there's all those people are out there still living, but there's no use for them anymore. They become redundant. So there's a lot of issues. Industry review. So Screen Australia is one of the largest funding bodies in Australia, and they did a survey in 2010, so it's a little dated, but I think some of the findings are still relevant. So basically what you're looking at is a cottage industry really. You've got 96% of businesses are owned by the founder. So it's basically me, I own my own business, I don't employ anyone. So that's what you've got. 20% have had equity held by friends and family, and 10% have had some kind of professional investment. So you're basically small businesses, casual workforce, very large amount of money coming from taxpayers to fund people telling their stories, and tax incentives and the like. So it's a pretty funny industry really. There's not much in terms of job security or sustainability of building a career. A lot of people have, but I think it's going to get a lot harder for people to maintain that. I think there's some more information. The outcome of the study was that people that seemed to be more viable than anyone else were, they had diversity of content, they had diversity of business activities, so they were involved in new media, television, films, they had, fingers in lots of different pies. I've listed some examples there, which is like Porchlight Films. There were 3 producers that came together and joined forces so that they could share the load, but also that they would have money coming in for, if I was working on a project, money would be coming in for me, and that might sustain you and you as well. So these are all basically set up in the same way. Matchbox Pictures, 5 producers joined forces, and they recently sold a share of their company to a US company called NBC Universal. Etc. Gold Coast, Sonar, Big Bang Sound was a husband and wife team, and Shine and Fremantle, Shine TVs, they do MasterChef and a lot of reality TV shows, and the same with Fremantle Media, and they both bought companies recently who launched premium channels on YouTube. So people are kind of looking for different income revenue streams.
And so the basis of that is not only collaboration but
Yes.
scalability, like
Yes.
that is scaling the business up
Yes.
through that collaboration.
Yes. Okay, so we swing back to the MEAA. Doubt that any of you would have known about this campaign, but it's obviously called Save Our Stories, and they rallied a whole bunch of actors, crew members, etc., to take photos of themselves with the sign, the logo, and send them. It became like a picture. What's the word? Shouldn't do this thing when just time, should
Was
you?
it like a social media campaign?
No, it's a social media campaign, but it was also a petition. Thank you.
Right.
It would take me 5 minutes. A petition. So it was a picture-based petition. So rather than sign a form, they wanted people to.
Oh, like a Twitter campaign
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, where you.
Yeah. So I think they collated all these and sent them down to Canberra. So they. It was done because the government is reviewing the visa rules around who can come into Australia and work on films here. The MEAA had a they were invited. It was a very loose arrangement. It was nothing that was ever formally set up, but they were always asked their opinion when a big American film was coming here, and they said, we want to bring our camera crew and we want to bring our makeup artists and 100 million people, and they would ask the MEAA for their opinion on whether or not there were people here that could satisfy that level of input, that could actually do those jobs. Were there people here that could do those jobs? So the MEAA would say, yes, of course there is. You know, they could choose from XYZ in this department, you know, Joe Blow and his friends in this department. And they would give them lists of people that were eminently qualified, who'd worked on big productions, and then they would lobby very hard for the government to deny those applications. So at the moment, that is being reviewed. And that's also, so it's not just performers and crew, beg your pardon. So it's the same with actors, you know, being able to bring in lead actors, and then how many down from there, you know, like secondary actors, and then, you know, your big players. So how far can you go down? So the idea is if you scrap the visa controls, and the productions would be able to fill all those spots with, you know, basically they'd just be able to bring everybody with them. So the government says that it's removing red tape, and the Screen Producers Association are driving the change to, they say it's too restrictive, and it's restricting their business practices. So they've made a case to scrap them. So it happened in the TVC industry and made a huge impact. That basically we started importing TVCs from other countries and we weren't making anything here. So our television commercial industry just overnight just went from being quite robust and healthy to being quite destitute. So history has shown, but no one wants to look back, everyone wants to look forward. So this is a huge issue for crew and performers. Although there are some performers who believe that it's only fair and that we can cope and that we will remain robust.
Is this likely to happen? You think it will go ahead?
I would have thought yes, just because of the arguments that have been made
particularly by the producers.
Yeah, by producers and others. There's been a lot of actors who've come out in support of scrapping the visa conditions.
All right, so there's actually division within the industry around it.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of a breakout. But the good news is that the campaign has actually worked. So I've brought together a whole lot of different people, from performers to crew members, and because of the campaign, the MEAA I think just a week or so ago, were actually able to secure the numbers so that if it does go up, they believe they can defeat the motion in Parliament. So, which is great. So I'm not sure if you guys are doing campaigns. So the MEAA is happy to share parts of their campaign, of this particular campaign with you, if anybody is interested in duplicating it in another way. So, so it's been quite successful. Okay, so we get down to the handout. I thought this was easier rather than talk too much, that you would have the information that you could take it away with you and you could digest it and see whether or not these were anything that you would like to undertake. Now these have come from the union, the MEAA. They would love you guys to do some research for them if you so chose. Obviously, that's one of the biggest challenges, is that everybody's so busy trying to keep the house standing. There's no time to do that strategic, forward planning and all the research that goes with that. So they're only too happy. If anybody wants to put their hand up to do any of this, they're very keen to assist in any way they can, to give you pointers or help you with your scoping, whatever you need. So I've just done them as bullet points here, but this is more expansive. So the biggest problem, and you may or may not be aware of this, is the incentives that governments around the world, that states in the US, that states in Australia provide incentives for productions to come and shoot. So you would all be aware that Johnny Depp was recently here doing Pirates of the Caribbean. Now that was based that had a lot to do with the incentives that were dangled in front of them to come here. One of the things was that the Gold Coast Council, so it went down from like being a state incentive, we boiled right down to a little wee council who said that they would do some infrastructure work in the location area that Pirates was going to shoot in. If Pirates came, they would do the work. I presume that meant the jetty that we all saw him traipsing out on every morning and, you know, being surrounded by millions of people trying to kiss him. So it starts very wide, so there's incentives to come to Australia, so the government provides incentives there, and then it comes down to state, so the state adds a few incentives as well. So we're talking tax breaks, mostly tax breaks, I think, but there's all sorts of weird things that they offer. So, you know, relaxation on location fees. I think there's sometimes actually money offered as well, putting money into the production, so investing in your production. So it goes from country down to state, and then you've got the example of Gold Coast Council, so you're going really, really micro. So that's one of the big things, is how do we fit in to what everybody else is offering? So you've got, you know, Louisiana in the US, you've got the UK trying to attract, you know, like the James Bonds of the world, and then you've got us trying to get Pirates of the Caribbean. And they all play off one another, so the production kind of shops around and sees what everybody's willing to give. It's quite a mean thing, because they'll come and talk to the MEAA, and the MEAA will invest a lot of time negotiating working conditions, because obviously American crews, English crews, Canadian crews, they all work, they have different working conditions, they have different rates of pay, they have different hours of contract. So we work a 50-hour week. That's a standard working week on an Australian film, but other people work different hours. So there's all sorts of issues. So they come and they say, oh, we're thinking of coming and shooting in Australia, and the MEAA then steps in and starts negotiating with them, and they, you know, they're always trying to say, oh, we're not going to pay for this, we're not going to pay for you to travel out to location, and we go, well, yes, you have to, because that's part of how it works here. And they go, no, we're not going to do it. Oh, we're going to go off and go to Queensland. We're not going to come to New South Wales. Or we're going to go off to Canada. You know, Canada have offered us a better deal. So there's a pressure for the MEAA and for governments to kind of buckle and go, oh, okay, you know, we'll do it for nothing. So that's a really big thing for us, is to know how we compare. And it's quite broad. So you could just start with state, or you could start with country. There's all different ways that you can buy into this, but obviously it's a very global market. So obviously the global information is would be really a benefit. So So there's some examples on your sheets of paper about what kinds of things other countries are doing. But there is a bit of a scope here as well about what the MEAA is looking for in terms of information. There's been a few research papers written as well about this idea of incentives. There are some academics who believe it's just a race to the bottom, that basically incentives don't work. So there's that aspect as well. The other thing is, of course, the state, as I said, so there's the global view and then there's the state-based. All the different states in Australia offer different incentives, so that's another one. So these are kind of in level of importance to the MEAA about, it'd be great if we could get, that's the big one, that's the big fish, is the offshore production incentives. But if no one wanted to do that and then someone said, oh, I'm going to take the easy way and just do the state-based, that's great as well, because there's a lot of stuff that's hidden. You know, it's not something that you can just find online and go, oh, I'll just copy that, that's great, because there's a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes, so it looks as though it's easier, but it might not be. The visa restrictions, which is kind of level 3, I guess, and basically looking at, again, how other countries handle this kind of thing when, you know, like it's extraordinarily different. You can't just go and work, I can't go and work in the US, but someone could come here and work. So it's, you know, it doesn't kind of work the same. So